Whoa, hello, hello. Most beautiful stars. Hello, hello. Happy Wednesday. It's good to be with everybody. I am adjusting a bit of my stuff. I am Courtney, host of Stars of the Morning Light. Good to be with you. You are at Edgar Cayce Life Skills Study. We are in his biography for right now. I apologize, folks. I'm trying to figure out where all the light sources are going wrong, but that's fine. I will just shine for you and shine. Because I am live, I do say hello to everybody that comes into the chat. If I can, and Lucky Stone 888 is in the house. Thank you, sir. Definitely, folks, please subscribe to Lucky Stone 888. He is my lovely partner in crime for Esoteric Tea on Saturday nights. Edgar Cayce Life Skill Studies. I started this like a year ago. There's a huge playlist, pardon me, where either we are in his biography, which is right here, or one of his source materials. Right now, we are doing Edgar Cayce on Reincarnation. Please check out the playlist so you can catch up. Also, if you're interested in purchasing these books, there are links in the description. We are not far into his biography because the way I like going about it is slowly, carefully, digesting it, talking about things, life skills. So we are currently at page 145 in over a $500 or 500 volume book. So if you want to purchase that, there's a link below. Please use the link. I'm a part of the Amazon affiliate program, associates program, what have you. You can purchase it that way. Pardon me, folks. I think that past moon on the 13th still has me all energized, and I got a lot of interesting energy today. And it snowed here in northern Georgia again in mid-March. I believe March 14th. My Friday 11 a.m. episode will be about the shift of the poles, what it's doing to our weather, and what we need to know going forward, like into the summer with gardening, all sorts of experiences, natural disasters, that sort of thing. That I'm pretty positive is going to be March 14th at 11 a.m. that Friday. Good to see you, Lori. All right, beautiful people. Okay. We are in Edgar's bio. Let me recap and remind everybody. And like I said, please go to the playlist. Each episode is either marked as one of his source materials, because we have already gone through the secrets of the universe and how to use them, and or on reincarnation, which is another source material. Each video, and I believe there's 50 something videos, 40 something videos. Each video is either bio or that source, and it's marked. So you can go back to that playlist and click on all of his bio and catch up. Because we love learning about Edgar. Before, I really want to put that out there. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Stars of the Morning Light. If you enjoy what you hear here, hit that like button for me. Subscribe. I appreciate it. Leave a comment below. Comments really do help, folks. I really want to emphasize again, when we're in his bio, it's not just to talk about the Akashic records when I get an opportunity to, or to bring 100 years forward, because he was during the turn of the century, during the spiritualist movement, and it's 100 years later, and there's a lot that can be discussed, right? Differences, similarities, food for thought. But in a lot of ways, it's also to bring the humanity back to what is now this magical being that walked the earth, who was a human, who had all the complexities of being a human, who had all the responsibilities of being a human, a father, a husband, a son, a brother, to bring the humanity back to him through taking deep dives, pardon me, deep dives into his biography is definitely the reason why I want to do it this way. Because I think we tend, when something was 100 years ago or further away, even way, way long ago, from the masters to the psychics to the healers to whomever, we put them in this sphere of magic and incredibility, right? Which he is very credible, almost unbelievable energy, but he is very believable. So to bring everything back to all humans are actually able to access the Akashic. They just have to be aware of it and remember that they can do so. Lovely Edgar was given this gift. He was definitely a more evolved human, as in consciousness. And when you go back to the playlist and listen to who he was as a child, it was very clear. He had more compassion for his family, brothers, neighbors, community, society. He had more compassion than the average kid. He had more insight and understanding than the average kid. So, yes, so he was a little bit more evolved. He came into this world a little bit more evolved. But everything that Edgar could do, so can everyone else. So, bringing the humanity back to him and showing him in the light that he was just a man can help with others identifying the gifts that they might have and identifying the fact that they're capable of doing it as well. So, that's the whole point. I care for Edgar deeply, and he did such great work for us. As we learned last time in his bio, the first um surgical implant, let's say. Like right now, my ankle had to be completely reconstructed with screws and metal plates. The first time anything like that had ever occurred, we learned in his last episode with his bio that it was an Edgar Cayce reading that a doctor was able to put a screw through someone's knee so he wouldn't have to amputate his leg. Think about that. That was the first ever in history. Not Western, Eastern, everywhere in recorded, quote unquote, history that surgery like that was conducted. And it worked. That was because of Edgar's reading. He gave so much to society, to humanity, through his gift. And so I don't want him to, can we hold him up in esteem for that? Yes. But Edgar would even want to emphasize, even if he didn't know if people could, 100 years later, I'm telling you, humans can access the Akashic. They can. You might have to work a little bit for it, but that's okay. You got to work for every skill you have, right? So, where we left off last time. Oh, my goodness, beloveds. Edgar had moved to Montgomery, Alabama. So Gertrude, his wife, and his newborn son, Hugh, are still in Hopkinsville, Kentucky. But he had lost both photo studios 2 fires. One was an arson, one was a mishap. So he lost his livelihood. Remember, he had also thought that he lost his ability to do readings after there was this huge I don't even know the word I would want to use for this. It's in the playlist, folks. Go back and listen. He had been working with another doctor, and they put Edgar on stage in front of all these other doctors who happened to see that Edgar was in a deep, deep trance and started poking and prodding and ripping fingernails off, sticking him in the face, in the arm, hurting this man because they could not understand how he was not feeling the torture in a deep trance-like state. Ugh. Edgar walked away. Edgar was so ashamed. Edgar and Gertrude did not know what to do. He loses both of his photo studios, which was his livelihood. So much tragedy. On the onset of, or offsetting it, I should say, he has his first child. He's a father. What a blessing. But as a father, provider, he had to figure something out. So he starts actually in Jacksonville, Alabama, or Jacksonville, Mississippi, I believe, or somewhere in Texas. That was short-lived, very short-lived. That's why I don't remember it so well. Moves to Montgomery, Alabama, is working as a photographer. And what he does is he's going around and he's taking pictures of the kids at the beginning of the school year and at the end of the school year, during the school year, holiday photos, what we still do now, right? School photos. We all have our weird pictures of when we were kids with the horrible backdrops. Yes, we have them. I have mine with my mullets and stars and whatnot behind me, the Milky Way behind me from the 80s. Yes, we all have them. But through this time, he would be walking in the woods to go to all these different schools with his equipment on his back. And he spent most of his time in silence, working out his shame, his guilt, his frustration, his confusion, working all of that out in nature. This has already been covered in previous episodes. Well, while he's in Montgomery, he's doing fine. He's actually making some money again. He's enjoying, he's come to some kind of resolution, peace with him in himself, thinking that his gift was taken away because he allowed it to be abused. Part of that abuse that he was a part of consciously was that because of those fires, he ended up being in debt greatly. And so he got tied up with these people that wanted him to do readings for economic financial gain. Well, Edgar messed around a bit, enough to pay off his debt, but sooner or later, his gift was pretty much cut off. And I will tell you, it's because he hadn't forgiven himself. That was the big source of the reason. Because he never wanted to use his gift for financial gain like that. But it was just unfortunate accidents over and over and over again. So in this time in Montgomery, he gets some peace while he's walking in the woods. He refreshes his mind, he refreshes his scope, he accepts the fact that he's not doing readings anymore. He really wants to build his photography business because just a few years prior, he was winning national awards for photography. It was truly his passion, and he was really good at it. Well, it just so happens that somebody who used to know him in Hopkinsville reached out to him because they were their first child that was just recently born appeared to have complications. And they knew Edgar when he lived in Hopkinsville, right? They reached out to him, and because he knew these people, he tried saying, "Hey, I can't do it anymore. I literally can't do readings." Because he didn't know that he had authority over his gift and he could do it himself. He thought someone else, a hypnotherapist or doctor of some sort, would have to put him into a trance. And no trances were working with everyone that had tried prior. Well, these people, though, pulled on his heartstrings, and Lahane, who he originally started working with, him and this couple traveled down to Montgomery, really pulled on Edgar's heartstrings, and Edgar said, "Oh, well, we can try. I of course have no control over what's going to happen, so we can try." And Lahane was successful putting him under, and the reading was successful in curing what was going on with this child. So Edgar again, oh my goodness, it's back. It must be back because I'm using it correctly again. It must be back because I'm doing the right thing. I'm helping to heal people. Well, word started spreading a little bit around Montgomery. And a doctor there was like, "Hey, I hear you can do these readings." That was when the reading happened, when the first surgical implant of a screw to save a leg, as we do every day, thousands of times, everywhere in the world. Implants. That was how that happened, Montgomery, Alabama. Well, that doctor then started kind of working with Casey. But Casey was very cautious with this doctor, hesitant, let's say. That doctor even admitted later in life he was not the best of folk. Like he used blackmail to get into the country club. He used a lot of different ways to elevate himself. And one of those ways was he was studying Casey. As every time Casey would do a reading, he was recording all of it. He was studying all this stuff, and he was the doctor who did that first implant of a screw into someone's kneecap. Medical miracles, right? Medical advancements. So I don't really hold anything against him when he chose to write a huge article, medical journal, right? As we would call them today, and presented it to a big medical conference in California. Whoa. He kind of had to as well. So I don't he had to talk about the surgery that was conducted, right? But then if somebody says, "Hey, where'd you come up with that idea?" He's got to tell them, "Casey said so." With that being done, whoa, news started moving. News everywhere. News articles everywhere, from California to Ohio, Chicago, New York, Missouri, news articles everywhere about this psychic diagnostician, psychic physician, the sleeping prophet as we know him today. And that's somewhat where we left off, folks, is what transpired from all of that is where we left off. Edgar had been visiting his wife Gertrude in Hopkinsville, and back then, it's a long travel. right? Some might be on train, some might be on wagon, some might be on horse. Very still few were in a car. He visits his wife, he's with his child, everything is lovely. By the time he leaves them and gets back to Montgomery, he's in his shop getting all of his equipment ready. He's got to go out and go take some pictures of some more kids. A man walks in. He lays down a ton of news articles in front of Casey and goes, are you him? Are you this guy? From the time that Edgar left Hopkinsville and got back down to Montgomery, Alabama, which I will tell you, folks, I've driven that quite a bit. It is still a hike, even in a car, going 70 miles per hour. It's far, especially for all of you who might not be from here, the States. This place is massive. It takes quite a while to get from one place to another. By the time when he left Hopkinsville is when all these news articles were spreading in the big major cities. He leaves, and news reporters start trampling into Hopkinsville, hanging out in the front yard of where Casey grew up, talking to his father, Leslie, to get all sorts of dirt and information, which, of course, if you listen to any of the videos on the playlist, Leslie loved the attention. Edgar was unaware of any of that happening because he's traveling from one place to another. Somehow, this man who approached him in Montgomery figured out, talked to enough sources, was probably a really smart investigating journalist, that he went, two of his photo studios burnt down. Where's he working now? Because I bet you he's doing photography. Finds him in Montgomery, shows up with all these news articles. Could you imagine Casey's face? Poor, lovely Edgar Cayce. He was just going to go for a hike that day and then go take pictures of some kids. He had no idea any of this was happening. He didn't know the medical journal had been written. He didn't know all the news articles. Nothing. And now all of it's in his face. So, what next? What next? Because now this is so big at the turn of the century when there's news articles all the time about all these different spiritualists, news articles all the time about what Houdini is doing. Big reports, right? He did not know that his life was going to start shifting in ways very unimaginable. And that's where we are, beautiful people. In these reports, these news articles, they were referring to Edgar again as a freak. So, all that lovely trauma from his childhood and what the kids would call him, and family members, and somewhat exiled. And of course, also later in life, being exiled from the church for pockets of time. And he adored the church. As he's reading these articles and they're calling him a freak, they're calling him illiterate. Casey was not illiterate at all. Not at all. They were calling him all these, what we would say now, hashtags or trigger words or um, all the taglines to make people interested. A literate man, has cures. What was one of them? A literate man becomes a doctor when hypnotized. Oh, that's salacious, isn't it? The one decent thing, though, prior or during all of this is that Edgar was able to kind of thumb through all these articles. I can't imagine the shock on the shock. I really can't. Through some of these articles, though, the doctor who sprung all this, Ketchum in Montgomery, did speak kindly though to about Edgar. And so that was needed for where this story is going to go. So we're picking up on page 145. And this is some of the stuff that Ketchum actually said. His language was usually of the best, Ketchum was quoted as saying. So he's trying to prove to people he was not illiterate. But then he goes on to say, what an amazing gift. His philosophical terms and descriptions and his physical, right, terms of the nervous anatomy would do credit to any professor of nervous anatomy, and there is no flattering in his speech, and all his statements are clear and conscious. He handles the most complex jawbreakers with as much ease as any Boston physician, which to me is quite wonderful, in view of the fact that while in his normal state he is an illiterate man, especially along with the line of medicine, surgery, and pharmacy, of which he knows nothing. So, please note, the headline would say this: illiterate man becomes a doctor when hypnotized. When you read further in the article, Ketchum would talk about the language that Cayce uses, physical, emotional, mental, all this stuff. Illiterate meant he should not know any of this. He did not study any form of medicine, any form. He did not study, there was no Freud being studied here, right? There was no, other than spiritual. Edgar read the Bible a lot. There's definitely no medical. So Edgar had to kind of, even though he was irritated by it, Edgar had to kind of, it's the news. It's the same as today. It's when we listen to stuff today. So this is me bringing it 100 years forward, folks. We see the tagline. We see the news line. We see all these little click bites, click words. But then when we actually go and listen to what is being said, that's not accurate. None of that's accurate. And now in today's world, with the onset of all the technology and the desire for all the clicks, gotta click, 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 click. It's even more salacious. It's even more absorbent of it's I've clicked on stuff that the words absolutely have nothing to do with what the article is or what the video might be. So if this was a problem back then, and it was, it's the news. I can't put it in the scope of what we're going through now. Imagine if this was now. Imagine if this was happening to a poor, unfortunate soul now. But he had to at least accept why they used that as a tagline. So he was trying to say, in these trances, he is saying things that he should not know. That's where that came from. So he kind of had to give everyone a little bit of compassion, which he came here in this world with. Ketchum told the New York Times that he had never known of any error in the readings except in 2 cases where father and son had the same name and resided in the same house. He simply described the wrong person. Now, this description of Casey, although rather short, is no myth, but a firm reality. Ketchum went on to report. The regular profession scoff at anything reliable coming from this source because the majority of them are in the rut and have never taken anything not strictly orthodox. So he was trying to say every reading that at least Ketchum has witnessed and documented has been accurate, other than two. And it is because of father and son with the same name living under the same house. Yeah, things got a little mixed up, which would happen, folks. Names are very important when you go to do readings. Extremely important. Extremely, extremely important. Location, not so much for me, but it's because of how I handle the names. So I can see how that happened. But he's also saying all these guys that are going to scoff at this, all these professionals, all these doctors out here that are scoffing, it's because they're not open-minded. They don't want to look outside what is the orthodox way of training and coming about knowledge. Ketchum also provided a possible explanation, which he claimed to have obtained from Casey while in a trance, and his statement has since become the most quoted explanation of Casey's psychic talents. Edgar Cayce's mind, so this is the quote, everyone, if you're listening. Edgar Cayce's mind is amendable to suggestion. And same as all other subconscious minds, but in addition thereto, it has the power to interpret to the objective mind of others that it acquires from the subconscious mind of other individuals. The subconscious mind forgets nothing. The conscious mind receives the impression from without and transfers all thoughts to the subconscious, where it remains even through the conscious to be destroyed. We covered so much of how the abilities work in all of the episodes of Secrets of the Universe and how to use them. The majority of that book was what is going on with the subconscious mind and the conscious mind. And if y'all want me to break that down in a short, like 20-minute video, let me know in the comments, please. So you don't have to go back to all the playlists. But a lot of what people were finding out with Casey and asking Source, the Akashic, what had to do with the subconscious. I see that Lori and Kim came in. Good to see you. Thank you for coming. So, what does Edgar decide to do? Well, it's interesting. After all this news came out, he was still trying to just live his life. Of course, he spoke to Ketchum. Of course, he did. Right? And a week or so later, there was a telegram sent to Edgar from Ketchum. Now, he's been actually talking to someone in Hopkinsville. He's in Hopkinsville right now, talking to a hotel owner in Hopkinsville. So, Casey's hometown, where Casey's wife is, where his child is. Smooth, right? See this Ketchum? He was a smooth operator. Let's say that. He sends Edgar a telegram saying, listen, myself and no, we would pronounce it in the Western as Albert D. No, but I think it's no E, like elongated E is the proper way to pronounce it. But I might just call him No, Dr. No, right? Who was oh, I'm sorry, not a doctor. That was the hotel owner. You got Dr. Ketchum and you got Mr. Albert No. Hotel owner, doctor. Send a telegram to Montgomery, to Edgar, to propose if he came back to Hopkinsville, setting up a business to do these psychic readings for the physician. Okay. At the same time, at the very end of this little note, they said, and we would follow all of your terms, Edgar. Your terms. Because they knew. Offering him to go back home, to be close to his parents, to be close to his son, to be close to his wife, to start this as a business. What would be your terms, Edgar? And we will throw a ton of money at you. Wow. I'm going to read the end of this chapter to you. Hello, beloved seeker of truth. She just asked, did we miss much? No, my dear, not really. I've been having to recap. All right, and for everybody who's listening later, I do connect with those who are in the chat because I am live and as a lovely community here at Stars of Morning Light. Consider subscribing, consider joining us in the chat when you can. You never know when you're going to catch me. Let me make sure I'm on my right page. Read. Here, presented to Edgar, was public validation of his psychic gifts, as well as an offer to return home to his family. As a business associate later said, he had the most important decision to make of his life. He had to finally make up his mind about himself and the weird things that came out of him. There is one thing, however, that Edgar had already made up in his mind. His psychic ability was not a trick or an ailment or the work of the devil. It was a talent, a gift that the Lord had provided him. And as a gift from God, it had to be used. This, more than anything else, compelled him to go into partnership with Ketchum and No. The fact that Edgar knew that Gertrude would not approve of the partnership did not interfere with his decision. 100 years ago, all you beautiful ladies, partners out there, spouses, yeah, decisions were made regardless of what your thoughts were. But before I continue on, folks, do know, even though he knew Gertrude would be completely against this, he definitely put taking care of Gertrude and his son in all those terms and conditions he's about to present to them. I just thought that line was kind of funny because in today's world, if you don't tell your spouse something this big, ooh, you gonna get it, right? Oh my goodness. In time, Edgar believed Gertrude would come to realize that the business of giving psychic psychic readings had to be accord the same degree of professionalism as his photography business. He needed an established location where truly sick people would know where to find him. A reliable stoniographer, that's the one who takes down the readings, writes them down, to take down the readings, and a conductor whom he trusted to present his and his patient's best interest. That's conductor would be who can put him under hypnosis to represent both Edgar and the patient's best interest. Edgar also desired to be near his family, not only Gertrude and Hugh Lynn, but his mother and father and 4 sisters. The next morning, after receiving Ketchum's telegram, Edgar sat in the lobby of the First National Bank of Montgomery and wrote to Ketchum on a piece of borrowed stationery with one of the bank's pens. He told Ketchum he would accept the proposition on the express condition that no one seeking trans counsel would be turned away because of financial hardship. The poor would be treated for free. In addition, Leslie, who was his father, would conduct all the readings. Half the income generated by the proposed partnership was to go to Edgar and his father. The other half would go to Ketchum and No, the hotel owner, who would pay the partnership's overhead expenses and, in addition, finance a photography studio in Hopkinsville that would be owned and operated by Edgar and his family. By return telegram, pending a formal 5-year contract, which was signed a later date on October 12th, 1910, No and Ketchum agreed to Edgar's terms. So, first of all, this man thought about it all night, ended up at the bank, probably just looked at his bank account, right? And said, I gotta do this. I have to do this. First and foremost, though, anyone in financial hardship, they are free. Second, my father conducts the readings. Also, all the proceeds that come in for those who can pay for this, split down the middle. Half go to me and my father, meaning my family. And yeah, Edgar always was taking care of his dad. And then the other half goes to Ketchum the doctor and the hotel owner. Plus, I want a photo studio that my family operates. See all these terms and conditions, folks? He was thinking about, if these two bigwigs want me, then I better take care of my family. So on a stationery and a pen at the bank, probably like I said, he just looked at his account and went, I have to. This is for my family. He wrote down his terms. And the terms get interesting, but they work. Let's keep going. Gertrude was pleased at the prospect of having Edgar back in Hopkinsville, but was rightfully distrustful to Ketchum and dubious of any business in which Leslie was a partner. His father. His father also was always looking for the quick deal. The quick, his father, we've covered a lot. I'm going to skip this paragraph here and let you know that Gertrude knew what was going on. She knew that Edgar was thinking about the family. She did not like Ketchum because he's the one who invoked having a whole bunch of newspapers reporting on her husband with no, warning beforehand. She also didn't like Casey's dad. She knew he was always going to be a con man charlatan, always trying to look for the quick deal. She also, the hotel owner, she understood the only reason that he was really involved in this was because if people actually came to get a reading from Casey and then get the physical treatment, the medical treatment from Ketchum, they would need to stay in Hopkinsville and somewhere, probably at his hotel, right? So later, when these terms were really being drafted, it said, like 4 months or, months later. And do know this didn't actually kick off until about 4 or 5 months later because things kept being kind of added, clarified, what have you. That was a part of it. Edgar forced that hotel owner, if people come in to get a reading from me and they're seeing Ketchum to do the medical treatment, which Ketchum, charge him whatever you would like. You're a doctor. I can't tell you what to do there. But the hotel owner, he said, oh no, they get a discount. If they're staying in your hotel, they're getting a discount. I mean, he made it very clear. And kudos to Edgar. Fair for everyone, but yet also helping his family. It's hard to find that in today's world. It really truly is. We're going to get even more into it. This might be a long episode. Sorry. A reading on quote unquote the work was conducted on February 13th, 1911. 4 months after the formal contract had been assigned, and 3 months after the psychic partnership and a new Casey photography studio was legally operating in the state of Kentucky. There was no mention in any of the subsequent letters and correspondence about why it took this long to ask advice on the subject that could be reasonably viewed as partnership's primary directive or purpose. They did a reading, and I'm going to actually quote some of this reading. That reading Leslie conducted, and it was about this business. Y'all should hear what happens when I have to do business readings. Because the Akashic understands that we're human. The Akashic understands we need to make money to live in the world that we live in, right? But the Akashic will always care about a much grandier message, a much grandier use of the work. And the same happened to them. The message that came through, and one that the source would articulate time and time again, was that the patients or those who benefit from the readings should supply the funds necessary for the survival of Edgar and his partners. In addition, the more credibility that the readings generate and the more people who believe in the value of the information be given them, the more Edgar and his partners would gain material value, worth. Despite the esoteric language in which this message was presented, using terms such as inner conscious, ethereal body, and subconscious mind, it sounded like good old fashioned business advice. Because Leslie kept having to kind of probe. No, we're talking about business here. And although offering material benefits was clearly a necessity in developing the practical business aspects of the partnership. The most important aspects of this reading was the suggestion that the ultimate purpose of the work was not to provide diagnostic insights to aid physicians or bring about miraculous cures, but to help people, quote unquote, open their minds and accept the truth of the ethereal and spiritual world. It is no doubt for this reason that the source then offered an important clue to the future success or failure of the work. The reading ended with the statement: the minute we gain credence and give credit to ourselves, we lose it all. Hold on to that, folks, please. So the Akashic, Leslie's asking the questions, and he just keeps trying to go back to business. What do we do with the business? What do we do with the terms, the conditions, this and that? Because I'm going to skip a little bit of that I was going to read just for time's sake. They also had to look at legal matters. They brought in people from the National Health Association. They brought in local judges, and they had them witness Edgar give a reading to then ask, is it even legal to start a business with this? Well, the judge, who had already known Edgar from the past, was like, there's actually no legal conflict here. To the point that, later, much later in life, that same judge tried to buy the business from the hotel owner and catch him because he was all about some Edgar Cayce. Because Casey helped his child. That's why. The medical association, though, that's the term that we would call it today. They witnessed, and there was conversation because this is all new. And uh, can it be harmful? Like, what are we doing here? But again and again and again, people, all of his quote unquote cures finally were starting to be documented. And so they also had evidence. They could also witness, like, whoa, Casey is talking about things that he would not rightly know about in his walking around daily life. So legally, no, there was nothing against starting this business. I want to bring this now again to 100 years forward. As a Akashic messenger and knowing the world that we live in, there are still plenty of people out there that are charlatan when it comes to medical. There are also still plenty who, whoever they are communicating with, may not be the Akashic. Whoever they are communicating with might not be the source that is correct for medical information. So please, everyone, because my goodness, that is even more popular in today's world. And I would hope everybody has common sense that you don't go to a psychic for medical stuff when we are 100 years forward and the doctors know what's going on. Now, what I will say about that, for me, who is a Akashic messenger, reader, whatever, if someone asks me medical, usually this is how it's going to go. There are things that they need to heal, trauma-based, that's holding negative energy within. Their diet is usually way off. or there is something possibly happening. If there is a possible, I will always tell them, go get a physical, have them do this, talk to a doctor about that. I can kind of maybe nudge, and it's not me, it's the Akashic. But I can deliver a nudging to maybe go see a doctor because they can x-ray, they can this, they can that. But I can also do what Casey does. You need to put this kind of supplement into your diet. You need to have this. You need to have that. I just did one a month ago. And it was beautiful. It was their first question. How am I doing health wise? And I was able to give information about that. But even still, we take everything with a grain of salt. We cross reference, we do our due diligence everywhere. Because there are still snake oil salesmen everywhere. Everywhere. And it's troublesome for those like myself. And speaking of myself, we are in a section that I will tell you, I did not know that Casey followed the same rules that I do until I read this. Um, as what I mean, as in my schedule, as in how I have to operate my life. Um, and then I get to read it on the paper and I go, there's the credibility, there's the knowing. We all get to learn together. So they are set up. He is actually above the bookstore that he worked at in Hopkinsville way long ago. He's above. He's got pretty much the whole upper level. There's different rooms. One of them is a really big, beautiful photo studio that, yeah, they were able to give him money to set that up. I can only imagine how lovely it is. With some other offices and areas, we still have that kind of layout in today's world above a lot of shops. And then one room that on the sign on the door, it's lovely. The sign for a studio was Casey Photo Studio, clearly. But then there's this other room, back in the corner. Now, the sign on that door was psychic diagnostician. That's why they had to get legal advice. They wanted to use the word diagnostician. Psychic diagnostician, the sleeping prophet. The reason we all have so much medical training and great things in today. So things are being set up. People are starting to come. What Edgar didn't know, by the way, that telegram of like, hey, we want to do business. Please say yes. Please say yes. People had already written in, sent money. People were lining the damn streets to get a reading from Edgar, to the point that $2,000 had already come in. And there was not even a business to be had. Edgar found that out later. Those terms were adjusted continuously. And here's some personal terms. So, let me. So, patients themselves were not normally invited into this office and did not get to meet Edgar personally. Rather, patients who desired to come to Hopkinsville and be examined by a physician, as opposed to those who requested, were handled through the mail. That's a big part of what I do, folks. I try my darndest to do all my readings via phone. I'm not going to do them by mail. But I very much try to do all readings by phone. I do not want human contact while doing a reading. I know, I love y'all, I really do. But even if you're local, I prefer to do it over the phone. I did not know. I knew Edgar was like that, but I didn't know it was like, this is kind of a rule. So Leslie conducted the readings. Everything was by transcript, right? Very rarely would Edgar meet the people, nor would the people wouldn't meet Edgar. This also helped Edgar to kind of keep himself hidden and easier on people who needs to travel, right? Another thing, Edgar, because there's a whole lot here, that Edgar, oh, I'm going to read this. It is not known how Edgar and his partners arrived at this particular arrangement, but it became a standard that would be applied until later years of Edgar's life. That one and one that was supported by source. So source from the Akashic, who would say that more than 2 readings a day was detrimental to Edgar's health. I've said it a lot of times here. It is true. And this is when we get to towards the end of Edgar's life. It's a big reason as to his passing. I did not know that source told him that. I did not know that he did not have contact with the people, same as me. I did not know that source told him 2 readings a day, period, no more. I did not know that. I have the same rules on myself. And honestly, his schedule is the same as mine. This is so funny. He only would do readings in the morning and the afternoon. He had to break them up. I do as well. So that's telling me it's credibility. And I don't need to build credit for myself. I know who I am. But what I'm trying to emphasize is like those snake oil salesmen, those people who are just on the phone constantly with hotlines, let's say, or those who just can pump out readings over and over again. The source might not be of the Akashic. Please take that in. My schedule works like this, and apparently it's the same as Edgar. So even 100 years later, it's still the same thing. I usually, if I'm having a reading in the morning, my first morning reading is at 11 a.m., maybe 10. 10 in the summertime, 11 in the winter. I want to sleep in some. Then I do another one somewhere in the afternoon, starting at like 2 o'clock. Now, I do not actually do 2 readings and record in the same day. So if I'm going to record like on a Wednesday, if I record on Wednesdays, I do 1 reading that day. If it's a day that I'm not here on YouTube, I do 2 readings that day, morning and afternoon. That's it. That's all I will do. And only twice a year, for hopefully some marketing, will I do an event. And the only reason I will do an event, and that's only twice a year, folks. I can't handle anything more than that because I am in the Akashic that whole time doing readings. And it is so hard, as the source told them, detrimental to Edgar. Detrimental to Edgar's health. So I have to do maybe an event because nobody knows what the Akashic is ever. And I clearly don't have as many readings as I should. I'm not booked twice a day, folks, so do know that. I'm free, I'm available, and I'm also why not promote myself? I'm also the cheapest because of what Edgar said. Edgar made it very clear in terms. Those who are very financially in hardship are free. The other people can make up the difference. Normally, an Akashic reading, an hour-long Akashic reading is $150 in America, in the States. $150, that is the average. I don't know if those people are contacting the Akashic or not. I do know that mine is even half that. I do all readings for $65. All of them. Unless you become a patron of Stars of the Morning Light, there's a tier there that it's $30 monthly subscription. You get an hour reading. I understand why Cayce had the terms that he did. Right now, I'm trying to figure out how to get Brad a tattoo studio. Same as Edgar's photography studio. Because my husband's got to get out of the warehouse and into the tattooing again. I'm thinking about my family. But never, ever will this gift be used for popular or grandiose financial gain. Never. So same as Edgar, rules and stipulations. We can only do it twice a day or it's detrimental to our health. If I work an event, the only reason I can do that is because I have a husband who was like Gertrude. That when I get home from these events and I have to lay basically in darkness for like 2 or 3 days to recover because it's just too long within the Akashic of this body of form being connected and my consciousness, subconsciousness, all Akashic awareness. I usually have to lay in darkness for at least 2 days. I start coming to about the 3rd day, but I have a husband who understands that. Like Gertrude. Gertrude would always be thinking about Edgar's well-being while Edgar's thinking about everybody else's well-being and serving humanity rightly. Gertrude focused on her man and her child. She focused on what was needed in the household. My husband does the same. So then I can only charge $65. So I can do as many readings as I possibly can. So the atmosphere, the pairing of partnerships, intimacy, business, all of it has to be kind of ordained and organized in a lot of ways from the Akashic because it's going to know what people need to succeed. They want everybody to succeed. It's not that. It's that they don't want to see, uh, well, greed, jealousy, right? They don't want to see any of that. It's not for the highest good. So, with this being known, now I will tell you one of the terms from Edgar, too, was he basically put it out there as there is no price to this thing. You can't put a price tag on a reading. So, whatever they can donate, have them donate it. I think later on, they said if the people can afford, they got to do a minimum for like $25. Okay? If they can afford $25, we'll do it for 25. If they can't, then we still do it because those who can donate more create the balance for those who can't. It's the same how I operate with the Patreon members. Those who can only afford $5, you can only afford 5. Those who can afford 8 kind of make up the difference, in my opinion. Same with other modalities I do for the patrons, only for the patrons. The full soul restoration retrievals. That is all donation based because I could not put a price on that. The Akashic, I went, this is the average of the in America, 150. So what's half of that? 75. I'll do it for 65 because the world likes their prices, right? There's a lot of once you're starting to work with the Akashic, and so this is a indicator, people. I'm trying to influence, not um to appear great or holier than thou or anything. Um, but those who really truly do, they're gonna have the right price tag. I sincerely mean this. My teachers, the curriculum I got for 3 months and the experience I got for 3 months this past summer into the fall, it was $88. Those who can truly do and are compassionate and have the awareness and are able, they're gonna try to make it accessible to everyone. Big indicator, big, please take that in. So with all these terms, all these conditions, photo studio is up. Everything's beginning to rock and roll. I see that Jackie J came in. Good to see you, my dear. And Big Dad standing tall. Good to see you, Neil. Good to see everybody. At the very beginning of this, I was recapping from a prior biography episode about how Edgar Cayce would go into such a deep trance. And people were not understanding how, when you poke him with a needle and you start removing his fingernails, he's not waking up. I know many of the listeners here will remember that. This is an interesting little thing that I wanted to read to you. One night, very early on in this business, very early on, the men were all sitting around celebrating that they signed the contracts and they're having a fine dinner. All the men, a visitor came to the door. This is a description that Edgar gave of what happened. Edgar later described the events that followed. There was a knock on the door. When opened, this figure came in. He introduced himself to each of us and shook hands with all. Asked why he was there. When asked why he was there, he said he came to see what they were going to do with Edgar. He asked each their purpose in the matter and gave each a warning. This man, beloveds, was not a Western man. He was what this book would call an East Indian with dark features and was dressed in conventional light-colored suit and wore a turban. So a beautiful Indian from the East, out of nowhere, knocks on the door the night these men are celebrating. Comes in, introduced himself, shakes hands with everyone, and asked each one of those men, basically, what are your intentions with Edgar? And then he gave each one of those men a warning. No two warnings were the same, but at the heart of each was the same message that would come through in the first reading dedicated to the work. That greed and self-serving interest could destroy the good that could come from the partnership. The men were urged not to lose sight of the real value that such information could be in the spiritual life of individuals. In other words, there was a higher purpose to their partnership than diagnosing disease for profit. Having delivered his message, the East Indian promised to join the party for dinner and then left. Just like how the Akashic actually used all these esoteric, interesting words when Leslie was trying to get a reading out of Edgar about the business and had to keep going back to business questions. And the Akashic was the Akashic was saying, do not let greed make this, do not let greed be the point of this. The point is having people open their minds. And now all of a sudden, the night that they're celebrating, partnership, everything is in motion. Things are starting for a fine dinner. This West Indian man, or East Indian man, as they would write in this book, knocks out of nowhere. Everyone thought that he was just a friend, Edgar later wrote, but no one seemed to know him. Just after he had gone, one of the men said, I forgot to tell him where the dinner was to be, and went to call him, but no one was there, and no one in the hotel remembered seeing him. The East Indian did not join them for dinner, and the partners, so I apologize, they were going to dinner. They were all gathering to go to dinner. The East Indian did not join them for dinner, and the partners didn't think anything more about the curious incident. However, in years to come, his, so the Indian, his reappearance in Casey's life would make Edgar and Gertrude wonder exactly who he was and why he had come. Like the fires that periodically destroyed Edgar's photography studios, his unexpected appearance in Edgar's life was too much of a coincidence to be ignored. Out of nowhere, this beautiful Indian man knocks on this door full of white guys, by the way, for 100 years later. This was all white men in this room gathering to go to dinner, I should say. Getting their um before dinner drinks happening, right? Having their cigars, and then they're going to go to dinner. Beautiful Indian man knocks on the door, appears as if he knows everyone, or they're just being, polite and thinking he knows somebody in this group. Come to find out, they all realized none of them knew him. He asked each one of these men what their intention was with Edgar, and then he told each one of these men two separate warnings, personal warnings. So this would have been Ketchum, the hotel owner, no. Edgar, his father, Leslie, probably maybe another couple in the mix. Business partners, possibly. The doctors, when Edgar was on stage in a trance, Western doctors who didn't understand what was going on and removing fingernails and poking and prodding Edgar while he was in a very deep, trance state, very deep meditation. couldn't understand. And then news spreads all over America, all over these beautiful, huge states of ours, of this sleeping prophet, this human that can go into such a hypnotic, meditative state and then give these messages from what they didn't know to call source. They didn't know what to call subconscious. Eventually, they asked, and Edgar said Akashic, which is a Sumerian word. Beautiful man who I'm sure knew of traditions, knew of customs, knew of abilities from the East, met Edgar that night. I'm sure could see and know that Edgar was a good man. But he needed to ensure, he at least warned everyone, you do not take this in vain. You do not make it this grandiose business for profit. You do not abuse and misuse who this man is. And we will come to find out, beautiful stars, that that interesting East Indian man pops up again. Who is he? You'll just have to stay tuned to find out. But in the meantime, leave a comment below. Let me know what you're thinking. Give a thumbs up. And if you're interested in getting his biography for yourself, there's a link in the description. It'll bring you right to the page on Amazon. You can order it. I'm a part of the Amazon Associates program, so I get a little bit of kickback, like 50 cents. Why not? And I'm here for any of your questions, any of your thoughts, and if you would like me to shorten some of the understandings here in small videos, like I said earlier, let me know in the comments. I love expression, especially about Edgar and the Akashic. I see that Chloe came in. Good to see you, my dear. Everyone have a lovely day. Be here Friday morning, February 20. I don't even know what day it is. 21st. February 21st, 2025. We are going to be talking about the power of saying no with healing. The healing power of saying no. That's what we're talking about. On Friday morning, be with us here at Stars of the Morning Light this Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Ooh, because Lucky Stone 888 and I, we're going to be talking about some creepy stuff again. What is this? What is that? What lurks in the darkness in the woods? Stay tuned for Esoteric Tea on Saturday night, everybody. I'll see you guys later. Thanks, everybody. Bye, guys.